BKB are delighted to bring you their new podcast, More Than Just Numbers. Join Ali and Luke, along with guest speakers, whose aim is to help you navigate through your business journey. Business is more than just numbers, and at BKB, the team provide financial direction and leadership, so each episode will cover a different topic that will help you and your business grow. We hope you find this episode of value.
So welcome to our latest podcast, this time on marketing. Personally, I've always struggled to understand what to do, what works and what doesn't work, and then how do you measure this? It's not all about numbers on social media posts, although this clearly helps, but it's converting those likes and views into pounds, shillings and pence on the top line of your profit and loss account. At BKB, we see many businesses spend nothing on marketing and then wonder why they're struggling. On the flip side, some get carried away because they're spending too much, but they're not measuring what they're doing. So today we aim to dissect through all the mystery of marketing with Katie Street. Katie is the founder and managing director of Street Agency, which helps other agencies develop marketing strategies to get noticed and attract more leads. After working within agencies with some big brands for over 10 years, Katie launched the company as she realized there was a need for an agency that focused solely on agencies. She knew she could create an easier and better way for agencies to build engagement with brands and companies. Katie has grown her business over the last 2.5 years and last year tripled in size using the practice what you preach model, which has given client retention and success. Katie is now launching something new, which she will touch upon at the end. Also here is Caroline, who has worked with us at BKB now for 6 months. This is the first time that we have ventured into this world of marketing, and Caroline has been instrumental in increasing our online and social media presence. So a question then for Katie. I'm going to go Katie first. What do you think are the biggest marketing challenges for companies right now?
Oh, do you know what? I mean, what a great starting point. We're starting at the beginning. So, there are so many challenges, but the one that we see over and over again is just starting to build an audience and get some engagement. You know, I think a lot of businesses struggle to know where to start. Like, how do I even start? So I would say the number one problem that we hear from businesses, and I guess taking into account that we work mainly in the, as you've introduced very beautifully for me, Ali, thank you,
Thank you.
in the B2B space. So the biggest problem that we see is really, that initial engagement piece. How do I reach an audience and how do I start having a conversation with them? And I think that is usually the biggest thing that we solve for our prospects. It's really, for the businesses that we work with, it's where they start with that journey and giving them the tactics and the ideas on how to start building engagement with an audience, I guess. So
there's so many platforms, isn't there? And it's difficult to, certainly as a non-marketing person, to know where on earth do I go first to suddenly start launching a presence. And everyone talks that you have to be doing social media, you have to have a Facebook page, an Insta page, a LinkedIn page, and knowing the little I've learned over the last 6 months is that every platform is a different message you have to kind of get across.
Yeah, I guess, look, I'm going to say stuff that's probably quite controversial now, but I'm just going to do it because I'm nothing if I'm not honest, and you know that. So I would say there are so many people out there that look like they're doing fantastically because they've got thousands of followers on social. It means diddly squat a lot of the time. Reach is important, of course it is, but actually relevance is so much more important. So for us, by far, in the B2B space, by far the most important and the most successful channel for us is email marketing. Now, if any of you guys follow us, and please do go follow us on LinkedIn or Instagram, are the two social platforms that we focus on more than anything. We put out content every day. We've got, we haven't got huge reach, but I don't need to have huge reach. My marketing agency, the marketing agency landscape is around about 25 to 30,000 agencies in the UK. We have probably, a 20th, about 1,500 followers or something on each of our platforms, but they are highly engaged. We do get some really great conversations started within those social platforms, but nothing like what we get through email. Email for us is by far the most successful channel that we use to drive engagement. And when I say we do email marketing, we do it a little bit differently because we are B2B. We position it as me, as a person, rather than as a marketing team, because we're not selling products, we're selling a service, and people buy people. So our email marketing actually is quite light touch. It looks like people are getting an email directly from me or directly from one of the other team members, and that's how we build engagement. And in fact, there's some really interesting stats out there that show plain text emails get so much, people don't want to be marketed to by marketing departments. They want to speak to a person. So a lot of the people that I market to probably think the emails are coming from me, but they're not. They're actually coming from my marketing team dressed up as me. So by far, that, I would say, if you're working in the B2B space, doing plain text emails that are still trackable, we use marketing automation platforms via email, has been the one thing, alongside the tactics and the content that we create, that has grown our business. Social is great. And I know, I'm not going to be rude to anyone. I know people that have got 20, 30, 40, 1,000 times the amount of followers that we have, but their businesses are far smaller than ours and they attract much less new business than ours. So I would say, the numbers of followers that you've got on your social accounts, they're important to a certain extent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a successful business.
No, because obviously you could have 40,000 followers, but they might not be your target market. So exactly, you might have those followers and people think you're successfully visibility wise, but are those 40,000 going to buy from you? And also, if they're 40,000 Facebook likes, Facebook owns that data. So when Meta went down a few weeks ago, no one could market to their data, which was their only source of data, is their social media data. They could market to them. If that had been wiped out completely, this time that they'd spent gathering those 40,000 likes would have been pure waste of time, because they haven't got that data to market to, and they haven't got that data to email market to. So I see that a lot of companies make the mistakes of having lots of data on somebody else's platform, but never actually getting them to opt in to actually build their own data lists for them then to start the email marketing.
Yeah, it's so important, and you're totally right. And I'm not saying don't do social, of course. It is a channel that is worth investing in, but I would 100% advise look at your email marketing and your owned data channels first, because you can have far better traceability. You can see the data, but we just have seen, for us, and this is what we do for all of our clients, we do run some of our clients' social channels, but every single client we work with, we always get better results via email. You can tie it up and link it in with social, but you owning that email data is so important.
So how do you get on the emails marketing that you do the targeted email marketing? How do you, because obviously as a business owner, I think most business owners I know, their inbox gets absolutely suffocated on a daily basis. So to get noticed so what do you do to get noticed above everyone else?
Very good question, Ali. I feel like I need my team to answer this, because I obviously don't write as many of the emails anymore, but I do know how to do it. So I'll give you some tips. So the first one, from which I've already referenced, is send from a person, not from a marketing department. Now, once you've got people that are really engaged with you, once you've built an engaged data set of people that are continually mapping into your content, dialing in, opening the emails, clicking through, then that's fine. Then you can move to more kind of marketing styled emails that are talking about different things and look a little bit prettier. But actually, I would say start basic, and I've got so many tips here. So the first one is we never start with calling out something to do or trying to sell to someone. And I mean, we're on Zoom at the moment, so you guys can see, but I have this sign saying solving, not selling. So when we're starting any kind of strategy, we're always trying to understand what are the problems that the audience that we're talking to facing right now? We'll look at what's going on in the marketplace. Hopefully we'll speak to some of our clients' actual end customers and understand why they value them. We'll look at what their competitors are talking about and doing, and we'll understand, you know, what it is that their business does. Once we've mapped that out, we would hopefully start to see some trends in terms of problems or major challenges that are happening in their sector, service, industry, etc. And that's really where we start, is identifying that problem. Because if you're not talking to the needs of your audience, like you say, you're going to get lost. So the first thing that we do is a whole piece of research to understand what the problems are. Then we build out usually what we call a value proposition. So that's a kind of key leading marketing message that is talking to the problems and showing why you're the solution. And we'll build out content pillars from that kind of, you know, talk about those things. So there'll be certain themes and certain things that we want to talk about. And really, that's kind of where it starts. Off the back of that, we'll, you know, write content, we'll have podcasts, we'll do events, webinars, whatever it might be, but we'll put out and develop helpful content that is answering the problem that the audience have. So for you guys, today is a great example. You know, some of your potential customers have probably got, you know, challenges around how to structure their marketing. So you're developing content that's talking to that need, and you're going to hopefully push it out to them. So that's the first thing. You've got to have something which is helpful, that is talking to the needs of your audience. And then once you've got that, it's really about articulating it in a really, I would personally say, a very human way. So, you know, remember, you know, even if you're in a B2B, business to business world, they're not a BKB world, although we are in the BKB world today. But you're talking to a person, right? So speak like a human, be friendly, be open, be challenging, be exciting. You know, make sure that you're writing your emails in a way that's catchy, that's exciting, that's talking to their problems, that's identifying, you know, so you've got to have a really punchy you know, subject line. There are some really cool little tricks that you can do. So for instance, putting the word, you know, like RE, I don't know what to call it, semicolons, dot,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, re,
yeah.
And then something. There are, you know, you don't want to con people, but there are little tricks that you can do. Even, you know, in the email at the bottom saying sent from my iPhone, you know, those kind of things. So it looks like you're just sending something on the go. Which, you know, there is a layer of trickery in there, but it works. so yeah, think about being human and making sure that whatever you're putting out is solving a problem. And another little tip is only ever have one call to action, or ask them to do one thing. Don't give them lots of things to do.
How do you make the most of you create content online and what have you? How do you make the most of what you create? How do you make the most of the content that is created out there? How do you get kind of conversion and that? Do you see much?
Yeah, maximizing its value, I guess, is a good subject to hone in on. So I've got loads of different things to reference here in terms of the content that you create. So, and there's loads of things that you have to do in order to make sure your content is relevant. So first of all, think about doing something that's going to be easy for you to do and repeatable. And do you know what? The most important thing that you can do with any of this is you can't just do something once and hope that it's going to stick. You know, in order to, you know, so for instance, my podcast, I've got a podcast called Word on the Street, and I've been doing it for a year and a half nearly now. We've obviously got a lot more listeners today than I had a year and a half ago, because we do it every week. We release, you know, on Spotify, on Apple, every Thursday morning with different subjects. It's regular. So if you want your content to work, first of all, you need to think about something that you can do that's repeatable, but that you can do consistently. If you don't think you're going to be able to do it week after week, month after month, year after year, don't do it. And don't expect to get amazing results within the first few months. You might do, and you will do. You know, we started getting inquiries off the back of the content we were putting out straight away, and we do for most of the campaigns we run for our clients. But it gets better over time. So the more you do it, the more consistently you show up. It's like with anything, you know, if you go to the gym, if you go once a month, you're not really going to see good results. If you go, you know, every day, you are going to see good results. So like with anything in life, you've got to stick to it. This isn't marketing is not a flash in the pan. Oh, we did this one thing and it didn't work. Well, yeah, because you did it once. That's why it didn't work. So I think that's a really important thing when you're thinking about your content. Make sure it's repeatable. Another thing, in order to maximize its value, so for us, one podcast that I record, which I'm not necessarily saying is the easiest thing to do, because we get some really high profile speakers and doing that research and getting the guests on, and then getting briefs out and organizing all of that, of course, is a piece of work in itself. But every time I record a podcast, it's not just released on Spotify, Apple, etc. It goes on the website, all of the kind of podcasting platforms. We then, from that podcast, will produce 3 or 4 different social clips. So we'll do a video, we'll do a little video clip, we'll do an audiogram, we'll do what is kind of doing really well at the moment are these really fantastic slide shares. So there might be 10 key points or 10 key takeaways from the podcast, so that you can kind of slide through. Their kind of value slide shares, or it's not what they're referred to a lot. They're actually doing amazingly at the moment in terms of picking up, if you look at the stats, they do better probably even than the video posts, which never used to be the case. So we'll cut the content up, we'll have a write-up on the website, so it will actually form its own kind of blog post, again with all of the key takeaways. We'll produce shorter clips of the podcast, 5-10 minute clips that we will then put onto YouTube. So it lives in this one thing that I've done not only is pushed out on all these platforms, but it lives and breathes and gives us so much more content. That's producing a written piece of content, 3 different types of social posts, a YouTube video. It's 5 or 6 we get 5 or 6 different things out of that 1 hour, and it's content that lives and breathes. We don't just have to post it that week, we can post it again in a month's time or 6 months time sometimes. So
it, can't you?
Exactly. So think about things that you can do and how you can shatter that content to get the most reach out of it.
And obviously one size doesn't fit all here. Should companies focus on data-driven marketing, do you think?
I mean, I think everything has to be data-driven. You have to look at the data and see, and see what's working, and do more of what you're doing if it is, and do less if it isn't. So I think, I guess dependent how you're looking at it. For us, email marketing automation software, or marketing automation software in general, is absolutely essential, because it gives us the layer of detail underneath what we're doing that enables us to take action and turn our marketing into more sales focused activities. So, on the back of the marketing off the back of the marketing content that we put out, we can see, because we've got the data saved into our CRM, who's clicking, how often they're clicking, what their behaviors are, what subjects are interesting them, and then we can reach out to them or use the email marketing automation system to automate messages, because we can see what they're doing. So it then enables us to actually be a lot pointier and take action off the back of the behaviors that our marketing content is inducing from our audience. So I think you have to be data driven, and it's very quick to see if a campaign that we've done isn't picking up the traction that we thought it would. We would then obviously listen to that data and change what we're doing. But generally it actually just gives us more insights to be a bit more salesy and do some follow-ups. That actually means we're going out to the market to make sure they're taking action.
And I think as an accountant, this is where I always struggle, because I always look, and you will know this, because I always tell my clients, look for your return. Where's your return on investment? And one thing, as an accountant, I'm number driven, and I absolutely always struggle. I like to see a return that comes in on the top line, and that's measurable to the spend that you've done to generate that return. And with marketing, it's a different beast, isn't it? It's a science in itself, and it's almost intangible as to how you can measure the success. Do you have any tips for people that how they can measure their success that can kind of converts into pounds? Or I know you touch on numbers and driving into the analytics and things like that. Is there things that people can do that is that they could do themselves that's quite straightforward? Or
Yeah, I mean, look, the biggest thing, it's going to be really hard. Look, it's going to be really hard to track if you don't if you don't have any clever software sitting in the back to help you track it, right? I mean, you'll know because you'll be pushing stuff out and hopefully getting some inquiries. The data is important. I must say, the data tells us a lot, like I said, and it enables us to follow up in the right way. But without those kind of softwares, we wouldn't be able to see or do much with it. So definitely investing in marketing automation software. We use 2 platforms. One is HubSpot, which is quite expensive. We're a HubSpot certified. I say it's quite expensive. It's not. If I can afford it, it's not that expensive. So HubSpot is very good.
What does HubSpot actually do? What does it have?
So, I mean, it can do lots. We use 2 of the key elements. So we use the sales element and the marketing element. So it gives us full traceability of everything. So we can see when people are clicking through on our content. We can see when they open an email. We can see, and I can get notifications live, even if I've sent a sales email or emailed a prospect a deck or a proposal. I can see when they open it, and I can then set up rules to for other things to happen off the back of that. So you just get full traceability of what's going on. It tracks absolutely everything that they're doing. It gives us a CRM. It gives us absolute traceability of all of the behaviors of our audience. So we couldn't exist without that, or we couldn't be as smart without that. We could still push stuff out and hope that people were opening it and looking at it, but we wouldn't have the visibility and therefore the intelligence to take the next steps in our marketing strategies that actually push prospects over the line to become clients. So it's absolutely, for me, it's an essential part of our business. We absolutely couldn't exist without that marketing automation.
And that's something, isn't it, that is getting once you get the results of that, is following it up, because it's all very well if you're getting the result, but you need to do something with the information you're getting. Otherwise it kind of, everything falls flat on its face again, doesn't it? And you're sort of almost starting at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, say that when we started out, we did much more of, we push out helpful marketing content, and we have, to this date, and you've seen how fast we've grown, Ali, we haven't really done as much of the actionable stuff off the back. We've just pushed stuff out. And because we push really helpful content out, we then, I don't need data to know that my marketing's working, because I get inquiries. People email and go, "Oh, I loved that podcast that you did. It was really helpful. I'd love for you to help me do that for my business." Or I really enjoyed that article that, someone at Street wrote about blah, 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 or I joined your webinar. It was really interesting. So I know it's working without having the data platform that sits behind it, because actually what's more effective is the fact that people are coming to me going, "Oh, I love you." And people come to me through our social channels now going, "Wow, I've just found your podcast. It's really helpful. Thank you so much for doing that." So I know our content is good. I know our content is helpful, because actually even outside of the data, I have people coming to me and saying that. So if you don't have the abilities or the funds to invest in marketing automation software, I think if you keep putting good content and you keep pushing it out, even if you are just doing it via some kind of email sending platform that doesn't give you that data, but most of them do now, MailChimp, everything does, then you'll know if it's working, because you'll be getting inquiries. If you're not getting any inquiries and no one's telling you that it's helpful, then you're probably not talking about the right things in the right place to the right people. And that, that strategy piece, which we probably haven't spoken about enough, is, I mean, I did reference it slightly, but is probably the most important thing. You need to know where to show up, when to show up. You need to have some good data to start with. If you don't have any data or any good data for your audience, then you're not going to be able to start emailing someone. It's going to take a long, long time. So just like another little tip, there are some really good platforms out there that enable you, especially if you're a B2B business, to GDPR compliantly get hold of data that will enable you to build out these campaigns. So we work in the marketing industry. So we use, if you're in the marketing sector and you want to talk to marketing people, Alf and Winmo, which are great. They give us, the top 10,000 advertisers or, people that are spending on digital, creative, etc. in the UK. And abroad, and Winmo reaches globally, I think, and especially in the States. And then we also purchased something else called Apollo, which does it for everything and any sector. So Apollo is really worth looking into. Again, these things, they do cost money. They're not going to be, you can't get this data for free. Sadly, there are ways that you can get the data for free, but it will just take you a bit longer. There are things like hunter.io, and there are also other platforms like prospect.io and others that enable you to plug into your sales nav, which again on Sales Navigator on LinkedIn you still have to pay for, but then it enables you to scan pages and pull out all the email addresses, and it will give you sort of set it at 60-70% accuracy. But yeah, it's a job. You've got to start with some good data, and that's that if you don't have that and you don't have an audience, how do you start building it? Which is why a lot of people do go to social, because you can attract an audience through social. But if you can spend some time getting some good data, then it's what I can tell you now, it's definitely well worth it.
Would you say that there's one platform better than the other?
It totally depends who you are and who you're talking to, where you've got to understand where your audience lives. They live on a particular platform usually, or across a few different platforms. For us in the B2B world, LinkedIn is by far the most effective platform, closely followed probably by Instagram. We don't tend to use Twitter that much. That's not to say it isn't good. Other people probably get good results from it. It's just, I find Twitter's a bit more of a news platform, and we're not really a news company. So although we do put stuff out, we're not as prevalent on Twitter. So you just need to understand where your audience are. If you're a B2C company, it's likely that Facebook and Instagram are going to be your number one priority. For you, Ali, it's definitely going to be LinkedIn, because you're looking to speak to other businesses. So just understand who your business, who the people that you want to talk to are, and where they live.
One thing we're doing at the moment is a podcast, and we've been doing a few podcasts now. You also do podcasts, and I would say you're far better at your podcast than we are. So
no.
Where would you give some tips and advice to us or to other people about how to start their podcasts?
Yes. Oh gosh. Okay. So podcast. Oh, and I love doing the podcast. Can I just say, actually, podcast is a really good new business and marketing tactic in itself, because you can interview people that you want to be your client. And it's so much easier to reach out to people going, hey, would you like to come on my podcast, than it is to go, hey, would you like to be a client of mine? So I would say from that point of view, it's brilliant. We don't actually use it so much like that. We purely do use it as a marketing tool. But there's
a really good tip though, Katie. I'm going to write this down.
It's a good one, isn't it? And we do that for some of our clients. But in terms of building a successful podcast, so here are some tips, and some of these are really obvious, some are less obvious. But the first one is, I'm going to spiel off loads of random stuff now, guys. So I'm just going to go for it. So the first one is do it regularly. I've already kind of said that. So that's an easy one. So if you're going to do it, commit to doing it regularly, same day, same time. You want your audience to know when you're going to show up and get used to, and be like, oh yeah, it's, so I actually have people message me like, oh yeah, it's Thursday morning, the podcast's coming out, can't wait to see who's on this week. So if you're going to do it, I would say do it regularly. Don't do it, and if you can do it weekly, they just work so much better. It's a time commitment, but do it regularly and keep doing it. When we started doing the podcast, we used to launch series, and then there'd be a break, but you really lose your listeners in those breaks. So I've learned from making the mistake of launching series. I would say don't do a series, just do it consistently. And it might be that you can't commit to doing it every week, so you do it every fortnight or every month, or but just make sure that there's continuity and regularity, and people know when you're going to show up, because that, I promise you, that consistency, like I said earlier, is the number one thing that is going to help you have a successful podcast. 2, think about guests again, and subjects that your audience want to hear about. So get some big names onto your podcast, get people that your audience really want to hear from, because then that person will share it with their audience, and that will grow your listening. So if you go to people that have got, for instance, a good social following, or that they're likely to, promote the podcast, I know when we get a really big guest on the podcast that they're going to give it a big push, and then that's going to attract an audience in for my podcast. So that's good. And we've done things like pod shares with other podcasters in my industry. So we've done a three-way, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, with two other people that do kind of new biz and marketing podcasts in my space. They then released my podcast on their podcast to their audience. We did it to ours. So that really just, again, helped grow our reach and get some really good engagements. Yeah, really good guests, and asking your guests to share it, making it easy for them to share it, producing some really good assets, even sending them exactly what they need to put on their social channels, or an example of what they need to say in their email. So just take any work out of it being spread as far as it possibly can be by your guests, make it as easy for them as possible. So that's another really good tip. In terms of other things, I mean, we've been lucky enough to get sponsors. So at the moment, I'm actually sponsoring ourselves, which is losing me money, but is really helping me launch my new business. So because I know we've got a really good listening on the podcast. So if you want to make money from your podcast, it is possible. Pick up some traction first, but then look at who might want to speak to your audience, tell them about what you're doing, and see if they'd like to get involved and help sponsor, because they can, they can actually pay for it for you. So for instance, when I first started doing the podcast, not far in, I actually had someone approach me going, look, we've got similar audiences, I'd really like to sponsor your podcast. Like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I'll take some money off you. Yes, definitely. And then it meant that actually producing the podcast for me became free, because I just charged them basically what we used to pay our production company, and they paid for it, and it meant that my marketing asset was a free marketing asset. So also, writing up things in the show notes, making it really, easy for people to understand what they're going to learn in the podcast, making it SEO friendly. Gosh, there's so many. I mean, I could go on for days about this, but yeah, that's probably some of the top tips in terms of how to produce a good podcast. And obviously, sound, lighting, making it look good, all that kind of stuff important as well.
Excellent. And Caroline, you've been obviously helping us do some of these podcasts as well. And have you had experience with podcasts before?
I have actually, yes, I have done them before. And Katie is right. It is consistency. It's your guests who you have on, and it is consistency. And the idea of having it the same time every week, every 2 weeks, every month is key, because people do know they will look forward to listening to your content. It's very easy to be very sporadic with content, and it is consistency across any technique that you use. And I think podcasting is very, very new to lots of people. It's still quite new, and people don't know where to start. They don't know what equipment they need. They haven't got a production company. They don't know how to edit it. So I think they do tend to steer away from it, because it's just unknown territory. Whereas social media and other tactics are easy, just to have a dabble. You can edit it, delete it. But where a podcast, you've got to be a bit more organized. But I think they're great. I think they're great. And that's why you're doing them.
Yeah.
Not to Katie's standard yet, but we're getting there.
No, you are. And do you know what? You learn so much. Like, I get amazing guests on and talk about subjects that matter to my audience, but actually that also matter to me. So I learn so much every single week. It is like, doing some training every week, and I get to learn from some of the best people in the industry. It just works so beautifully. Another really good thing to do when you launch your podcast first onto Apple and wherever you're broadcasting to, is to make sure that you're getting those reviews. So we, when we first started, make sure that we ask people to write reviews. I will often, when I do my kind of sign off on the podcast, say, please, if you enjoyed today's podcast, go and give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and actually write that written review. And I'll do things like that. We'll try and work out who you are, leave your name, and the best reviews will send a book or something. I don't know, there'll be a little prize. And it's meant that we've got, in fact, I haven't checked for a while, but for quite a small podcast that's been going for a year and a half with a fairly niche audience, we've made it into and consistently been in the top 20 of marketing podcasts in the UK. And we've got something like 50, 60 5-star reviews on Apple, with about 30 or 40 of those being written review. There's loads of written reviews as well. So it's something that we've encouraged, but now because we're picking up momentum, people just do it anyway. So that really, really helps with your rankings on Apple. And then when you get ranked high on Apple push you and they promote you. So it's a really good thing to do.
Well, I've just made a note. So one thing you say about is the fact that you learn, and I've learned a fair bit from this actually. And I think every podcast we've done, I've learned something or taken away something from it, which I didn't know before, which is I didn't expect to be the case. Other than podcasts, what sort of video content is huge as well, isn't it? There's a lot of people do video content, and TikTok works very well for video content. Not that I'm on TikTok, but so I've heard. What sort of, is there a time that people can, like, if a video goes on too long, you've lost their attention span? Is there like a perfect time that people should stick to if they're going to go into the videos?
Yeah, again, it depends where you're putting the video, what the purpose is. So for YouTube videos, we post up. So for instance, the webinar, we don't do it for the podcast yet, but there is a reason behind that, and I'll explain in a minute because it's to do with my new business. But we, optimum length, I think, for YouTube is around 10 minutes or under 10 minutes. So if you're posting your podcast onto YouTube, I would suggest you do a cut that's 10 minutes long, that maybe talks about a specific subject, and you might use motion graphics to ask the questions, and then just, so that you're cutting to the really good, interesting pieces of content. So YouTube, 10 minutes. If you're putting up social clips, a lot of the time on platforms like Instagram, etc., that you can only post things for X amount of time. And I can't remember the difference between, I think stories is something like 20 seconds and then it moves on to the next story, etc. So make sure that you understand the algorithms and the rules that sit behind them, because that will guide you in terms of your video length. So I think on stories and on reels, there's a different length, I think up to 60 seconds. So, again, I don't get so involved with this stuff now. The team do it all. I feel like I'm losing knowledge because I've got so many amazing people.
I think it's called growing a business, Katie.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily know the exact times, but just make sure that you've done your research. And that's what I'm always pushing the team. Things change so quickly in our industry. So in a few weeks' time, this might be totally different, but make sure you're checking the algorithms, that you know what those optimum lengths are. There'll be loads of content out there that people have put out exactly in the same way as marketing content that will actually tell you what to do. So just make sure that you're listening and you're doing things in the right way. So it really depends which platform, where you're putting it, but it will change all the time as well. So just try and stay on top of it. There's some really good people out there in the world of social that put out some awesome content. Content Cal, who is actually so in order to plan all of our content and put as much content as we do out, and we do post daily on social channels, and we also we probably send 2 or 3 emails a week as well. We schedule all of that in a platform called Content Cal, and that automatically sends things out. So we can schedule, a week or 2 ahead, usually, what content's going out on what day, at what time, and we know what time's good to send things. But the reason that I was talking about Content Cal is follow them on social channels, because they put on some awesome events. They do talking about regularity, I think every Friday, their founder, CEO, does a kind of roundup of the week, what's been happening in social, what changes have happened, what new releases are there. So they're really good people to follow, to just stay on top of what's happening in the world of social and what you should be doing. They don't just do it for B2B businesses, it's B2B, B2C, anyone.
Is now a good time for you to talk about your new venture?
Oh, look at that. Well, I did touch upon it. Yes. So what I was saying, we don't we don't put the full podcast and or do the 10-minute clips ourselves on YouTube at the moment, because a lot of the podcast content we cut and keep secret for Tamba. So Tamba is my new business. It stands for the Agency New Business Academy, and it's very exciting because it's very different to what we do at Street. So for Street, we're a service business. We are servicing our clients. We're not cheap. Our retainers are thousands of pounds every month, but we do everything for them. So we run the marketing campaigns, we develop the content, we buy the marketing automation software on their behalf, we run the whole show for them. Tamba is for people not just that can't afford that, but people that want to do it themselves and want to get better at leading new business and marketing internally. So they're able to access all of the content, the ideas. We've got training programs. There's a whole insights section where they can save and filter based on different subjects and save content to their dashboard. We've got templates, from sales and marketing templates through to email templates, through to everything that sits in between. We're doing live events every week. We've got a community platform, which we're just integrating so you can meet other people in the industry and continue the conversation after you've been involved with a workshop or an event. We've got an amazing advisory board of some of the most famed people in the industry that are very well known for doing amazingly at new business and marketing, who are helping us frame what the platform should be, as well as provide support for our members. And what's the last thing that we have? God, I can't think of them all now. A marketplace where you can basically get discounts with all of the kind of suppliers that I've talked about today. So marketing automation and data platforms, as well as training partners. There's some awesome people on there that you can get some really, really good discounts from. People like Content Cow, Coolia, HubSpot, etc., all partners. So yeah, it's very exciting.
I was going to say, it sounds very exciting. Before we wrap up, Caroline, is there anything you'd want to add to what we've talked about?
No, I think it's all been really good and really helpful. I've certainly taken away some tips, even in my 28, or I shouldn't have said that people are guessing my age. Even in my experience, I'm always learning, and I've picked up some really good tips today. So it's been really, really helpful, Katie. So from BKB perspective, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Katie, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
And
as you said, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please give us a 5-star review and we'll send a prize to the best review. Don't know what the prize is yet, but we'll work it out. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.